I'm Dusty Reins from Amarillo, Texas. I haven't always looked like this. All of us in these interviews have been wearing Halloween costumes, obviously. At one time when I was growing up here in Amarillo, for quite some time growing up here in Amarillo, my family went to church every time the church doors were open, which was about 4 times a week. And by the time I got my first car, I was ready to get away from that regimen, and I went to another church that was a little bit bigger, had more girls to choose from since I was at the driving age and I was on my own. Plus I like to sing in the choir, and that church actually had a choir. The church my parents went to was like a little country church. But there were an awful lot of good spiritual values that I learned from that old country preacher in the small country church that started to come back to me after I started at school at Texas Tech. Even got so convicted about it, I decided, well, hey, maybe God has some sort of a calling on my life in respect of a full-time ministry. And there was a Bible college that was supported by our denomination in Waxahachie, Texas. I wound up there just searching for what God's will might be for me at that point in time. And it just so happened to be that I had one other friend from Amarillo that showed up. I had no idea that he was going to be there. And then there were a couple of people that I already knew from Lubbock that went to the school as well. And the 4 of us, we would kind of hang around quite a bit. None of us were hard to look at so much, and girls didn't seem to have much of a problem hanging around us. But we didn't necessarily want to hang around with the church girls. We also wanted to go find out what kind of girls there were in Dallas and such. And so we made a number of trips in Dallas. And one of those trips, we had heard about some type of a cult or coven of witches or druids or something. I forget exactly what it was. But it all surrounded a plaza of 4 almost brand new buildings. That during the time of the construction of those buildings, there were some odd things going on that caused 3 men to lose their life at that location. And in honor of those lost lives, there had been erected 3 statues that were in a center plaza in the middle of these 4 buildings. And the statues were arranged where they all faced one another. But the thing is, the statues did not have faces. There were the tall figurines. They were made out of concrete. There was not a whole lot of detail. You could tell that they were human figures and very tall, about 8 feet tall. But where the faces were supposed to be, it was hollowed out instead. So they were anonymous figures. And we had heard that this group, satanic group, I believe is what it was called, worshipers of Satan, were using this location for some of their satanic rituals. And so we decided, hey, let's go and take a look at this. And we decided to do this at the time of a full moon, because we figured, well, that's a good time to catch some either satanic, occult type stuff going on during the full moon, right? Well, that was in Dallas. We were in Waxahachie. One of the fellows had an AMC Gremlin at the time. Great little cars, got wonderful gas mileage, had plenty of room, and all 4 of us could fit in there very easily without being too stuffy in there. So we started out from Waxahachie, and we decided that we would avoid the interstate and just go ahead and take another older highway that connected Oak Cliff and Waxahachie at the time. And as we were driving down that road, we were just chatting right along and having a good time visiting with one another. And we came to, we got outside the Waxahachie city limits, and it seemed like the closer we got to the Dallas area, the more subdued our conversation was. And I personally started feeling quite eerie. And we weren't even talking about the statues or the satanic people or anything. I forget exactly what the subject was. But it just seemed like that I was having a harder time trying to breathe. It seemed like that things were just kind of closing around me, that it was getting darker. It was already somewhat dark. But I just felt this heaviness, and I thought it was just me. And well, as we kept going, it seemed like that Stan, the driver, kept going a little bit slower, a little bit slower. There was no traffic really to speak of on the road at the time. And then we finally got to where there was like a little country convenience store, and Stan just pulled over in there and stopped the car. And we all kind of looked at each other, and somebody says, Stan, what's going on? Stan says, I don't think I can go any further. And as we got to talking, we discovered that all four of us had this same feeling of just almost being crushed by darkness. And soon as we found out we were all experiencing the same thing, oh, it was just too much to take. And so we were going, well, do we pray or do we turn around and go back? And we decided, well, let's turn around and go back. You know, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe we're getting into something that we should not be getting into. And then Stan says, no, if we're real Christians, we're going to, you know, call upon the power of Jesus' blood and go in there and be victors. And we're all going, well, maybe Jesus is telling us we need to go ahead and turn around because I can't hardly breathe. And so, 3 against 1 at that point in time, we turned around, we went back to Waxahachie, and it seemed like the closer we got to that Bible school, all of that blackness and closeness and heaviness just gradually kept lifting. Our conversation became more lively, and we got to talking about, wow, are you feeling better? And yes, we all started feeling better. So we kind of left it at that. But as soon as the weekend came up, we decided, you know, maybe we should go back in the daytime when there's no danger of there being satanic people around there, and also there's lots of people and stuff. Maybe it will be a different experience. And so we recreated that moment, but during the daytime, went down the same highway to the same destination, and as we got to that old country convenience store, we were feeling nothing. We're even talking about the statues, and we had learned a little bit more about them, the fact that they had hollow places where their faces were supposed to be, and that sometimes articles were left behind. That had kind of piqued our interest because other people had been there. That's how we found out about the story beforehand. And so we finally got to the location, walked into the center of the plaza, saw the statues. They're pretty cool looking. Like I say, not a whole lot of detail, you know, no clothing or anything like that. They're almost kind of like ghostly, spiritual shapes in a way, but still in the form of a man, I suppose. And as we got closer, and well, we noticed that there were strange markings that was on the concrete, and had been done a number of times. It looked like that there had been repeated attempts to clean it up, but there were still traces of some of those markings, symbols, some writing. And then Stan got to look in one of the hollows in one of the statues where the face was supposed to be, and there were some coins in there. And as we got to looking at the other two statues, there were coins that were stuck in the bottom part of the hollow there too. And I can't remember exactly what denominations there were, how many coins there were. It seemed like that there were 3 coins in each hollow. I do remember that. And even while we were there, we did not feel oppressed or no darkness whatsoever. And so we just visited, took a few photographs, drove back to Waxahachie, and had our own stories to tell. And that's all I have to say about it. Thank you very much.